Well, former President Trump once again involved in a legal battle in New York State.
Yesterday, he was deposed as part of a defamation lawsuit by longtime magazine columnist Carroll. She claims the former president defamed her when he accused her of lying in her 2019 memoir. In the book, she says Trump sexually assaulted her in a New York City department store in the late 1990s.
Now, there are a lot of moving parts to this case and potential for another civil suit. Here to help us understand everything is Hofstra University law professor James Sample. And Professor, thanks so much for taking a few moments for us.
Thank you.
Quickly, it's important to note that we don't know what was said in Trump's deposition yesterday. The court imposed an order allowing him and Ms. Carroll to keep their depositions confidential. Can you briefly explain, though, what would happen during a deposition like this one?
Absolutely. And so one of the things that happens during a deposition like this is that the attorneys for the adversarial party have the opportunity to question the witness on the other side, and that witness isn't in the same doesn't have the same sort of protections that they might have if they were in court. For example, they have to answer even if they object, although they can, and it's very possible that Donald Trump would have in this situation either just outright denied the accusations or potentially could have taken the Fifth Amendment to preserve his right against self-incrimination, even though this is a civil case that Ms. Carroll has filed.
This case began in 2019 when then President Trump accused Ms. Carroll of lying in her book. The fact that he made those comments while he was a sitting president has been a central issue to how this case has moved forward. Can you explain why that is?
Sure. Well, this is it's certainly an amazing sequence of events, given that the comments that gave rise to the defamation claim were made by the then president of the United States, Donald Trump, in the course of a White House press conference. What is astounding, and to Chris's point, we don't know exactly what was said yesterday, but we do know what was said 2 days ago, and that is that Donald Trump doubled down on the accusations that he had made previously. And if every lawyer has a client that they advise just don't talk, Donald Trump might be the hardest client in the world to get to comply with that kind of request. And 2 days ago, he said that he had no knowledge of her, that this was a hoax just like all the other hoaxes, and that he would not have raped her because, and I quote, "This woman is not my type." So even though the initial defamation claim happened when he was the president, he's no longer the president now, and so she now has an entirely new basis to amend her complaint and pursue that claim.
He does make the self-incrimination part tough when he does speak like that. In recent months, though, lawyers for Mr. Trump, they sought to delay this deposition over and over again. They claim a federal appeals court has left open the possibility that the Justice Department could shield him from the suit. So what does this mean, and why did the federal judge deny it?
So there's the possibility. So when you are the president of the United States, there's a rule called the Federal Tort Claims Act that says that the president and other government employees are immune from lawsuits of this nature. But of course, 2 days ago, when he doubled down, as we were just discussing, he was definitely not the president anymore. There is the possibility that this case, at least the earlier version prior to Tuesday, will go away because he was the president and the Justice Department may intervene. But Ms. Carroll is also taking advantage of a new law that New York State passed last May that gives adult sexual assault survivors a 1-year window in which they can pursue a claim that otherwise would have been barred by the statute of limitations. And Ms. Carroll has said that when the window of opportunity for that 1-year grace period opens up in November, she intends to file a suit arising out of the actual underlying sexual assault, not just the defamation.
Professor Sample, what do you expect to be the outcome of this case?
It's always hard to predict with Donald Trump. You know, when he said that he could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and not lose any supporters, he has proven so far to have an escapability and a slippery, it's almost Teflon at times. This does seem to be a case that has the potential for serious consequences. And Maggie Haberman, the New York Times writer who has covered Donald Trump and recently released a book, said that of all of the legal peril that Donald Trump is facing, for some reason, and it's not clear why, this is the case that has most obsessed him and has taken up most of his attention, which may or may not be meaningful, but it certainly indicates that it is a case that bothers him.
And just real quickly, where would you rank this case as far as you've got the state of Georgia with the election fraud. You've got the New York Attorney General. You've got, I mean, there seems to be so much litigation. Where would you stack this in the pile?
I mean, it's certainly extraordinarily important to the victim. I mean, we're talking about if the accusation is accurate, we're talking about a rape, and it's hard to put that under under anything in order of priority. On the other hand, I think that in terms of the likelihood of actual consequences for the president, the likelihood of consequences, probably Georgia and Fani Willis's investigation down there is at the top of the list.
All right, Professor Sample, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it, and we'll be right back.